Oh, man.
I was always wanted to have that.
Yeah.
I gotta go free.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, Mike Baker did that last year. And he was like, I don't know if I do that again.
All right, 6 o'clock. We have
Yeah,
four,
see all the places.
minus Mr. Master George, happy anniversary to him and his wife.
Aw.
They're tootling around in San Antonio. Okay, so tonight we have 3 discussion items. There is no action on anything we're doing. So I wanna make sure we, for the sake of everybody's time, we make good use of 25 minutes here for our discussion, so we don't have to have as much later. But remember that nothing we do tonight is any action, okay? First, does anybody have any questions about the minutes? Okay. Second, I'm actually gonna bring up in reverse what's on here. So I would like for Craig, when we left off from our last meeting, we had discussion on the Huntington, Estate Streets and the takeover question. We posed some questions to Craig and table that, so I'd like Craig to tell us what he's found since our last meeting.
Okay. So since the last meeting, I went back and looked at our standards and specifications for city streets that have been pretty consistent for as long as I've been here, and even before I got here. Looked at what those were, which our standard street construction requires a lime stabilized subgrade, 8 inches of road base, plug base, and then 1.5 inches minimum of asphalt on top of it. So I reached out to Langerman, who does most of the testing for us and everything, and asked what kind of tests could they do to determine if a road was built to that standard. And what they would do is they would take cores, they would determine the depth, the compaction of the base, and they would also core into the subgrade to determine how much lime was used in the stabilization to see if it meets a general amount. I mean, it's specific to each site, but they can kind of ballpark see if the sufficient lime was. They put enough lime in that clay turns more to a sandy soil, which is the whole purpose of lime stabilizing it. So I told them that there's 6 phases we want to do, at least 2 cores in each phase, and so they gave me a price, and for that it'd be $4,500 to take the cores, plug the holes where they took the cores, and then run the analysis and provide the report. So that would be the cost of the testing. As we discussed before, the only common area that's currently there is the 31-foot. I did not get into the detail about what it would cost. I think it's cost prohibitive. We want to start looking at trying to acquire the additional 8.5 feet of every single house in there along the roadway. I think it would just be, we'll take the roadway if that's what the council wants to do, and the rest of it will basically be the property owners. There are utility easements on both sides of the street that meet the requirements for where the utilities are placed, and so it would just not be a standard right of way. But everything's constructed, so there's not gonna really be need to come in and widen the streets or do anything like that in the future.
Short discussion here. Questions? Anybody that wasn't here last time? Caught up to date? So the up to date, I'll give you the 30-second version. We talked about, obviously, private streets, city taking over. Does that set a precedent? What are we looking at? We really didn't have any at the time. Again, there was a discussion item last time too. We didn't have, much of our discussion was construction. So after about 10 minutes of running in a circle, we decided that we would find out what it would take to just give us a what if. However, the discussion was that even if you, at this point in time, even if you take over the streets, even if we were to do that, we're behind $40 million with repairs now. So how long would it ever be before we ever even got to repair it if needed? So if anybody's got any questions or any, I don't want to, we can decide, we can take the time in the regular meeting to decide what we want to do with that. If we don't have any just
I
discussion.
watched, I was sick for 2 weeks, I almost stayed in London, but I couldn't be here, but I did watch.
Okay, so you heard the whole,
Yeah, I did,
good,
I'm familiar.
good, okay.
Yeah, thanks for this.
Oh, that's right, you were on, we did.
3 times.
Yeah,
Kept
Yeah,
getting kicked off.
yeah, you were on, I knew you were there, I wasn't ignoring you, by the
It'd
way.
freeze up.
That was the mayor that did that.
Yeah,
we had some issues.
yeah, look, you're gonna blame it on me.
The mayor kept hitting the button.
You just don't get it after one, you know.
I'm like, all right, so,
Well,
let's cut down, y'all. Okay, yeah, you got something for me?
I really, I don't have a lot, cause I spoke a lot last time, so nothing really new. I think the thoughts of $40 million worth of roads that, and that's some heavy lifting, plus $750,000 of annual maintenance that we don't have funded yet. Is that, no, it's gotta be more than that.
700, no, we're $1,300,000, we're 700,000
Okay.
short.
Yeah, we're about,
Just to
about
take
half
care of
what
it.
we need right now, so.
Yeah, just to take care of it.
So we're halfway on the maintenance budget, nowhere close on the actual construction. As much as I hear the concerns of, we've paid our taxes, we've done our due diligence and, you know, to pay the same dollar as everybody else. Two realities are hitting me right now, is that that's a very large hill. And the mayor made the point that none of us have paid enough taxes to fix the roads yet. We're so behind that not a single taxpayer has truly paid what it's gonna cost to fix the roads. So, that reality is sinking in on me right now, so that's all I have.
So we'll just wait to address whether or not we go to 4,500 or not, and how that happens in the meeting.
I digress. I said, that was there. One thing that,
I'm gonna let you go.
one thing, and that was just a thought of, if we did accept those streets, Craig provided at the street update, month ago?
February 18th.
A list of streets that was, you know, with the alternative of the $32 million, but it excluded engineering and a whole bunch of costs. You know, we have 100 residents, how many homes in that subdivision? Give or take, so, you know, just thinking of the other 4,000 or so, 5,000 or so residences, that are gonna have the opposite. Why should we, the other side of the coin is, why should we be paying for their streets when they knew they got into a private development? So, again, those are just the things weighing on me, is that the other people not in the room still have a voice, and what does that voice say? So that's just both sides of the coin, the good and the bad.
So, we'll leave that for a small discussion. The next thing that we want to talk about is, our financing for the pretty ladder truck that's coming, in addition to, future utility improvements. And I had a very wealthy discussion, learned much with Craig today, so I'm gonna let him tell y'all what he's telling me to do.
Are you back there? Can you pull that,
Yes.
little sheet I dropped in there just real quick? So as you know, we have a ladder truck on order. It's supposed to be delivered here in the next few months. The original plan was we would issue debt toward the end of this fiscal year and then make the payment in October. The current legislative session that's going on, there are bills out there that, if they pass, they're going to greatly restrict our ability to issue various types of debt going forward. And, the concern that, Jennifer with Specialized Financial has, I've talked, not just her, but people in that profession, they feel like some of these bills are going to pass. They don't know which ones at this point, but they feel like they're going to, and they're gonna go into effect September 1st. So their recommendation is, if we're gonna do anything, we probably need to do it by September 1st, which means we would need to start this process early June. We do all the proper notifications, depending on which route we go. So just talking about the fire truck, we have three options. One is to do a lease purchase. The other is to issue a 7-year tax note, and the other would be to do a 10-year CO. Now, we could do a 20-year CO, but, and a ladder truck should last 20 years, but I know they're gonna be in here from the fire department well before 20 tie the money down for 20 years. So I think, 10-year CO would be there. The downside on the lease purchase is the interest rates right now are somewhere between 5.5%, 6%. And when I start talking interest rates here, in the current economic state, that's kind of where they were today. Tomorrow they could be somewhere else. So, in fact, there's a lot of people tapping the brakes. There are some issuing debt because they're like, it's not gonna get any better, it's only gonna get worse. But, we'll have to have that conversation too. So the interest rates there versus the most recent debt that, Jennifer's been involved with, which last week was around 4% for tax notes and a little over 4% for COs. So, that's a pretty substantial savings between 5.5 to 6 versus 4. The other thing is, by doing a tax note or CO, that goes into the interest and sinking portion of the tax rate, and it's not subject to the 3.5% revenue cap, whereas if we do the lease purchase, that will be part of that 3.5%, and would probably exceed the 3.5%. Based on what the payments, so just kind of looking at that, and that's if you want the 5%, I'm sure it would exceed what a 3.5% increase would be on the operation and maintenance. So looking at the 7-year tax note option and the 10-year, and that's what's displayed up here. So the first is the total cost that would need to be issued to cover the cost of the truck. The current tax note payment, that's how much we're paying on the ladder truck we purchased 7 years ago on a 7-year tax note. So that will be paid off in August. So that money is already attributed to the tax rate. So we can roll that portion over into the payment for the new truck. And then depending,
How much is that payment, Craig?
113,002.
Just saying that, oh, yeah, I
Yes,
see.
what's up there?
Right, okay, got
So,
it.
and like, that'll pay off in August, so.
Right.
So if we roll that in, the total payment on a 7-year tax, given the most recent interest rate she gave me, would be $378,000, and for 10-year CO would be $282. And then I have below the tax rate impact, that's if you back out the $113,000 that's already calculated in there, so that'd be the difference. So a 10-year CO, and that's based on the valuation for the current year, the total appraised taxable valuation of the city. So if that goes up, that rate will come down a little bit. If the total valuation goes down, that rate will go up a little bit. We won't need those numbers till July, exactly. But that's close, so you're looking at about 1.8 cents for 7-year tax note and about 1.13 cents for a 10-year CO. Now, the other thing that I discussed with Mayor today is we are also, I believe I had it in the memo here, we have about $15 million of utility bond funds currently available for projects, and we just awarded a contract for about $7.3 million for the reservoir. We're also getting ready to go out and bid for the plant yard piping, which I believe, I cannot remember that number, but I have it in the memo.
Isn't it 5?
Yeah, it's a little over 5, I believe. Yeah, estimated $5 million there, so we're at about $12.5 million. We have other utility projects that need to be done. We have the industrial lift station that needs to be upsized, and we're not necessarily ready to do that immediately, but there are some gravity lines and some force mains that will be tied to that new lift station when we get ready to upgrade. They're gonna come down Gray Drive, so we're gonna wanna at least put those new lines in before we resurface Gray Drive, because we don't wanna go put down a whole new road and then dig a trench down the middle of it, in some places 10, 15 feet deep. So we're hoping that part of the line that's already there, we can pipe burst it and just put a bigger gravity line in. The force main will probably have to excavate to put in there, so we'll need some funding for that. And as you all know, we have lots of utility projects that need to be addressed. So the issue was, if we do want to go with a CO, we can't do a CO and structure where we do 10 years. The portion for the fire truck would be financed for 10 years and paid by taxes. We we could issue additional funding, and that would be paid by, utility revenues. We could do that portion for 20. So if we wanted to do the 2.3 million for the fire truck and then do another 8 for utilities, we could do that. There are some issuance costs that are gonna be the same whether we issue $2 million in bonds or $10 million in bonds. There are certain fees to the attorneys and underwriters and all that that are pretty standard. So if we're gonna do an issue, it makes sense to just go ahead and look at issuing more. So,
Didn't you say today when we figured that out, that the payment of that'd be $575?
yeah, if we did the 8 million, it'd be about 560, 570,000.
And I assume in that same time frame, it's the revenue, because there's plenty of revenue
Yeah.
to do that, and his answer was yes.
And that's what, how many years, 10?
20. That's 20
It's
on
20
the
for the
utility.
8 million,
It's
10
10 on
for
the
the
ladder
truck.
truck and 20 on the.
But we can issue the bonds at
Same time.
different, at the same time for
Yeah,
different.
they just will structure the repayment so that
Typically,
we'll pay
yeah.
off that, a bigger portion the first 10 years and then the remaining we pay off over the next 20.
The reason that the CO sounds good right now is because this upcoming legislative vote would make it where there's a possibility September 1st we could not do what we're doing right now. So it would take enough time from now to get it done before that September 1st deadline to see, because if they pass it, it's gonna pass on the 1st September. And then it changes, and am I right, Craig, was telling me it changes the way you do this and how the CO is done, how the CO, the whole part of it
Yes,
is done.
yeah, so, I mean, there's multiple bills out there. There's some bills that, if you've been paying attention to it the last few years, each session, they take more and more stuff out. Like, I think last session, they took where you couldn't fund parks or civic centers and things like that with COs anymore. There's a couple bills this session that you can't build facilities, you can't build city halls, you can't build fire stations or police departments with COs. There's one bill that says you cannot issue COs unless it's required by a state or federal mandate or in response to a disaster. And, so, you know, it's which bills will get momentum as the process goes on, but there's a lot of bills coming at it, and there's that many bills, and if you've ever watched how the legislature works, they get a whole bunch of stuff that's pending, and then all of a sudden they start throwing things and throwing amendments, and all of a sudden they start passing stuff at the very end. And sometimes it's really hard to keep up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this bill got passed.
So would everybody be in agreement to moving from this discussion to another, which is letting Craig and Jennifer figure out if 8 million is the number, if 10 million is the number, if 15 million is the number, and come back with, here's the revenue, here's the best amount of money at this point in time for us to ask for, given the current legislation and the current revenue of everything that we know and we don't know.
Well, that's what I was just looking at when you were talking. Jennifer just responded to me. I asked her what kind of limit we looking at, and she said if you're trying, it would depend where you wanted to stay within the current existing INS rate or what you were willing to increase it to, that there's no cap per se. Now, the utility debt will not impact the tax rate. That would be paid by the utility funds. And as I told the mayor today, with Walmart and everything coming on board, we anticipate a significant increase in annual revenue, which is part of why we're a little comfortable doing some of the things we are going forward, because they're gonna be a significant user. I think we figured we're looking at probably somewhere about 1.2, 1.3 million just for their water usage. That's not their base fees or their wastewater. So, but the question came up, do we wanna tack on some more for streets and things? So that's why I have
That's what streets
that last number down there. So for each $1 million of debt we would issue, if we wanted to support it with taxes, it would raise the tax rate around 0.5 cent.
So running right into the street discussion, which will be a long discussion and not a long one tonight. It's just-
Well, and that discussion is to do all of them. I would say you don't want to issue a $40 million CO,
No.
or $50 million CO. That would probably adversely affect our bond rating. And I think that's part of what I have to talk to Jennifer about is, what is that limit we can do without adversely affecting our bond rating?
So that has some limit on the discussion of what we talk about roads, but roads was put on there just to have kind of a 40,000 foot short conversation of what direction do we start talking about?
I think we do tie this, my first opinion, we do tie this to some debt for roads. And we wait to find out. I'm not saying we max out what we can do based on how far we push it without messing up our rate, but, messing up our bond rating, but, you know, let's look at that and then maybe a couple tiers down from there.
Some
And-
break
and-
points.
Yeah, you know,
So maybe
Look-
get three options?
yeah, looking at how many streets, how can we maximize each level on streets? You know, you've got probably a good idea on how to do that.
What if we pick the top 5 words?
I don't wanna pick
and
a
the top
street.
3?
I don't want to pick streets, I never want to do that.
I'm not picking one either.
The whole 15 million for the utility stuff?
Let those,
No, I
let them
think if we
numbers
can get
talk,
another-
the money
Yeah,
and the
exactly.
cost.
What can we get?
So the question Brittany asked is the whole 15 for utilities. We're gonna need another big chunk of money for utilities when we get ready to upgrade the water plant. I'm not ready to dive into that yet because, Lorena wants to continue to have us process water for them. They actually increase the amount of water they can purchase from the DRA, so they have the ability to almost double what we're doing for them. They're interested in doing that. I've also talked to a couple of other cities that may not be interested in immediately getting water from us, but in the future. And so the hope is we get some hard numbers on the water plant, we might have the option to, because one of the positive things going through the legislature is appropriating more money to increase water supply. And if we can become a regional user, hopefully there might be some state or even federal options there to get some funding to help fund the plant upgrade. It's not just us taking on more debt we pass on to our customers. Even if we take on more debt, we will spread some of that to Lorena and so on.
So,
In fact, some of what we're doing right now will impact Lorena's rate going forward. We actually have time to update our, rate within.
You talking about the 12.5 million of the 15 million you already spent is gonna affect their?
Yeah, some of that will affect them, because some of that ties to the intake and treatment of their water as well as the intake and treatment of our water, so. We haven't built into the rate structure to amend for that, so.
On that same topic, I know that Hot Dog just completed and submitted its SWAT plan, which pushed water infrastructure to the very top of that list for federal and state funding, so
I bet.
we should see a ton of that. Not
Yeah.
us, but we should see more emphasis on that across
Well,
the country.
and that's why I hope if we go and say, we're not just looking for us, we're, you know, what we're gonna do could potentially impact 3 or 4 communities, not just one. I think that helps, because they like to score those things, so I think that puts us in a positive position to do that. But going back to the road thing, we have about 5 million, between 5 and 6 million to work with last bond issue, and threw out a couple street ideas there to do. I think if we can add to that list, there's definitely options there. I think there are some streets we can potentially do in the near term that don't require utility work, and think significant drainage work that we can knock off the list. So it just kind of depends how much we wanna go and how much of a rate impact we want.
So if we took, if you had the 5 million available, you went to, you and Jennifer sat down and figured out what that number was on the CO, how much the utilities, and then how much, if any, we could tack to that 5 to make a small impact to some of those roads in town. And then come back and tell us that
Yeah.
list and that number.
Yeah, and at this point, I just wanna see what your thoughts were before Jennifer and I spend time working on it, cause we all have limited time, so I don't wanna spend a bunch of time looking at something and then come back and I'll say, why'd you waste your time on this one?
It's always good to have options.
Yeah.
I have
I mean,
one,
there's potential savings and killing 2 birds with 1 stone, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, anytime
I
we issue
personally-
debt, we need to
I
look
know
at
it's
it.
work for you, but I'd like to see that option in person.
Well, and one of the things Mayor and I did talk about today, and I've talked to Jennifer, and she strongly agrees with me. This part of Texas has always issued COs for utility projects, whether it's Waco or whoever. I mean, it's surprising that Waco will issue $40–50 million COs for their utilities. Where I came from, Metroplex, almost everybody did their utility debt using revenue bonds. Revenue and surplus tax yield and benefit on by having surplus in here is kind of the opposite. We do COs and surplus revenue. So when you see those titles, it'll always say certificates of obligation.
I have one thought on how fast, I don't want to spin wheels, but my thought is Belton City Council just hit pause on the fire truck and some debt issuance because of, when they went out, they were very surprised at the interest rates. You said last week they were around 4?
Yeah, she did issue last week, they got around 4%.
Is that on the CO or the tax?
On the that was on,
Okay.
the COs were a little over 4. When I did the tax note, the difference between the 10-year CO and the 7-year tax note was about 20 basis points. Back a few months ago, it was like 3 point, I want to say it was like 3.8.
But right now, 4%.
Pretty low.
It is, but I don't know what Belton rates were when they said no, we'll pause and wait on that. But
And we
there's
don't
a
know
lot
what
of
their other
places.
financial situation was like either, that might have brought that up.
And there are a lot of places just paused because of the volatility, but like I said, it's kind of a double-edged thing, because you could say, well, we want more certainty, and then by the time more certainty comes in, the rate's 5%.
Yeah, and we're already obligated to the truck. We've already
Right.
put a deposit down. We've
Oh,
already,
it's
so,
been built.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
it's almost finished.
So-
And so we've got to do it, but my thought was just get in and get it done before we see any rates, the volatility go back up. I know that the cost of these trucks, the tariffs and all of that, there's a lot of moving pieces, so I'm not trying to rush things, but
Well, there's a time to, if we all, either way, we gotta go forward on the truck. I mean, that's the given, so the plan right now is we will start the process at the June meeting. We have a 45-day public notice period, and then after the public notice period, they'll do all that stuff. It'll come to you at the first August meeting to approve the issuance, and then we'll close before the end of August. And take the money.
I'm gonna stop us there so we get time to get up here for the meeting, but Craig did say, when you're planning on the first meeting in May, it's gonna be long. So everybody know before they get, we have 5, would you say, already
I
5
think
zoning
you
issues?
could have 5 zoning cases.
So,
We've got
We
a
need to
whole
extend
lot of
our-
applications for things in the last
we'll talk about that.
30 days.
Anyway, I just wanna make everybody aware that there's gonna be a lot on this, for a short one this time, it's really long.
You need a break this time so you can rest up for the next one.
All right, we're adjourned until 6:30. All right, 6:30. We'll call it to order. We do have a quorum and my notes. Will we get our invocation and pledges? Is Jerry Friedman here? All right. Come on up and give us our invocation.
Let's pray. Lord God, we are grateful to you for all things. This week especially, Father, as we focus our attention upon you in so many ways, whether it's the fact that school is out on Friday, whether it's the fact that we have special church services coming up on Sunday, whatever it might be, Father, you draw our attention to you, especially this week, and you remind us again, perhaps in a deeper way than usual, of our great need for you. And so, Father, tonight, we ask that you will meet that need. We pray, Father, that you will find us humbly seeking you in every area of our life. Lord, I thank you for this city council. I thank you, Father, for those who are serving on it. I ask, Lord God, your wisdom for each of them as they consider the needs of this local community. We continue to pray for our teachers, for our schools, for our first responders. We ask, Father, that in every way possible, that you will continue to watch over, protect, encourage, strengthen, as only you can do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Roll call.
Bert,
Present.
Finn,
Here.
McLean,
Here.
Master George, May,
Here.
Rogers,
Here.
Steiger.
Here.
All right. Citizens' comments. The city council invites citizens to address the council on any matter, including items on the agenda, except public hearings that are included on the agenda. Comments related to the public hearings will be heard when the public hearing starts. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The council is not permitted to take any action or discuss any item not listed on the agenda. When called to speak, please state your name, address, and speaking on the specific agenda item. State that item before you make your comments. The only blue card I have today is Kendra giving the chamber announcements for Ms. Vaughn. A new face. Not really new, but new.
Ooh, I wasn't listening. My name is Kendra Thompson. I'm on 230 Sam Drive here in Robinson, and I am going to be giving some chamber announcements. Okay, so our monthly board meeting is going to be May 13th. It's at City Hall at noon. Our board meetings are each Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month. Our next quarterly luncheon will be determined, but it's typically at Tajin at noon. Let's see. Big news, we're working with Fox 44, KWKT, on a project to showcase the city of Robinson. It's gonna be featured in their art community, so it's a big thing, so we're gonna be reaching out to a bunch of people out in the community. The program will air on July 7th. Our annual banquet membership, or our annual banquet, will be July 17th. We are accepting sponsorships, donations, and silent auctions items. Excuse me, tickets are now available to be purchased online. The theme this year again is gonna be a casino night. It was great last year, so we're just gonna, do it again this year. So I look forward to doing that. It was a good time. Another big thing that we're trying to do is collaborate cities. So the Bellmead Chamber and the Robinson Chamber will do a collaborative luncheon on September 10th at noon at the Bellmead Civic Center. If you don't follow them, or if you haven't been to any of their luncheons, please try to help support Bellmead. They're going to be trying to support us, and we're going to try to collab this year. And that's all the announcements I have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kendra.
Thank you.
All right, having no others, we have 3 proclamations. And I'm gonna try to go in the order that I've said. Do you want me to do these down here? Okay. First, we're gonna do the National Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week. I guess that means you, come on. Is that our friend? Animal friend. What do you want me to do? 2025 as National Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week. And whereas various federal, state, and local government officials throughout the country take this time to recognize, thank, and commend all animal control officers for the dedicated service they provide to the citizens, public safety, domesticated animals, livestock, and wildlife across the nation. And whereas every day animal control officers put themselves in potentially dangerous situations to protect the health and welfare of all kinds of animals in the public. And whereas the city of Robinson recognizes and commends the work done by the officer of Robinson Animal Control on a daily basis for the citizens of our community, and specifically recognize the following employees for his hard work, Animal Control Officer Carl Robinson. And whereas the city of Robinson recognizes the animal control officer who answers calls for assistance, capturing roaming and potentially dangerous animals, rescue animals in distress, investigate reports of animal cruelty and neglect, provide education for pet guardians about responsible pet care, and mediate disputes between neighbors regarding conflicts involving animals. Now therefore, I, Greg May, Mayor of the City of Robinson, and on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of April 13th through 19th, 2025 as National Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week in the City of Robinson, Texas, and encourage the citizens of Robinson to express their appreciation to the Robinson Control Officer, Carl Walmsley, for his service and dedication to keeping our citizens and our city safe. Thank you, sir.
He's the Batman, I'm Robin. Robin.
Good guy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Appreciate you.
All right. Who is for the national public safety? Come on, here we go. I'll get my reading in back. All right, whereas Congress and the President of the United States have established the second week of April as National Telecommunications Week, and whereas an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and the citizens of Robinson public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link between first responders and persons seeking immediate relief during an emergency, and whereas the work of these unseen first responders is invaluable in emergency situations, and whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year, now therefore I, Greg May, Mayor of the City of Robinson, and on behalf of the entire City Council, hereby proclaim the week of April 13th through 19th, 2025 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in the City of Robinson, Texas, and encourage the citizens of Robinson to express their appreciation to the Robinson Public Safety Telecommunicators for their diligence and professionalism in keeping our city and citizens safe. All right. She has to train the camera.
Oh, we can get Kevin out there, your public servant, and more people, Craig can jump in if he wants to.
He
Too
looks
far
like
for me
he
to walk.
totally wants to.
They need the attention. They need the attention.
And seated on the right is Craig Lemon.
All right, everybody here?
It's not about me, it's
You
about
ready?
them.
Here we go.
I get it.
Whereas public service is among the most noble and demanding of professions, and excellence in the delivery of public service helps keep Robinson strong and prosperous, and a wonderful place in which to live and work. And whereas Robinson City employees, through their commitment to excellence and diversity of skills, have made a great contribution to the city of Robinson by preserving public safety and the health of our citizens, protecting our economic well-being by keeping a close eye on the financial resources of the city, maintaining our streets, parks, and other infrastructure, administering justice, providing excellent communication and education to our citizens, and handling a host of other essential duties to the public and trust them. And whereas the city of Robinson recognizes the contribution made by public employees at all levels of city government and finds it fitting to set aside a special time to honor and thank these dedicated individuals for the performance of such vital roles. Now, therefore, I, Greg May, Mayor of the City of Robinson, Texas, do hereby recognize May 4th through 10th, 2025 as Public Service Recognition Week, and I urge all citizens to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of the city employees and to observe this week by expressing their gratitude and appreciation to those dedicated public service for the service they provide to our community every day. All right.
While everybody is being seated for the public service, you all have received an invitation at your spot. It says you are invited. Those are a couple of events we'll be having that week. I will draw your attention to the bottom one, the Public Service Recognition Luncheon. We do each year try to do something at Pepperell Park at the Pavilion. We will be having lunch served for all our employees, and it would be great if y'all could make an appearance there and spend a little time with the employees. They would greatly appreciate it. For some of you, it give you a chance to meet some employees you may not have met yet, so.
In other words, that Craig said, put that on your calendar.
Doing it right now?
Duly noted.
I have one consent agenda item to approve the minutes from April 1st. Can I have a motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Go ahead.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving into our regular agenda. We're gonna talk about so we had this discussion, it's gonna be number 8, and I think we might talk about 8 and 9 at the same time, if Misty doesn't mind if I commingle these things in. 8 is discussion regarding financing for the volunteer fire department ladder truck and future utility improvements, and number 9 was discussion regarding planning for future street improvements. In our workshop, we kind of talked about the possibility of combining these two into what we want to do with them. So, per that discussion, how would y'all like to send Craig with instruction on what the council would like to see based on what we just talked about?
I think we move forward with discussing with Jennifer a potential 10-year CO plus what other options to help us down the line.
Utilities and streets.
Utility, yep.
Okay.
So
And that looks like however many possibilities that is, or how many A, B, and C. And that was, do we also want to include in this, I mean, do we want to go ahead and say, I'm kind of talking about 2 agenda items, but they're discussions, so.
To include streets.
To include the streets and to include the money that we have to spend and what other money and what other possible streets that we could do if we added some of that money to the CO.
Yeah, we can do that.
I mean, I know it's kind of jumbling it up.
Yeah, that's the easy part. So I think part of the second item I had in here was also how do we want to move forward on the bigger task at hand, which is coming up with a plan to try to address not just the capital projects, but also we have the issue with the street maintenance and things. So one of the things I want to do is just kind of maybe talk about a few options, but also talk about how do we, last time we did this, and I think there were 2 of you that were still on the council from last time we did this. We did a couple town hall meetings. We didn't have a huge turnout, but I think most people that turned out were very well informed and I think had a better understanding of what the challenges were. I think that might be something that's good to do, but I think it also, we keep having the discussion about we're short on how much material budget we have to do the maintenance that we need to do on the streets. And that's not a bond issue, that's more of an annual revenue issue. And do we want to start exploring something like a street maintenance fee or something like that? It is specifically dedicated to, it goes into a particular account to do one thing and one thing only.
I just have 2 comments. One is I think we should go with your recommendation and your staff because you do this every day. We don't. Second thing, I think it's prudent for us to consider all options and not leave anything on the table and not. So whatever you think that we should consider, I think we should consider it.
I think a preemptive town hall is an interestingly good idea because of the fact town halls is a good idea because I don't think people have any, when I spoke at the chamber event this last week, people look at you like you have 3 heads when you tell them, okay, so we had a meeting and Craig did all this hard work and let me tell you what it said, and they're looking at you and then I go, but we're 700,000 short per year just taking care of what we need to. So I think before we get too wrapped up in what it's information sessions might be good so people understand what is ahead of us and the hill that we have to climb.
Transparency is very important. I
Yes.
agree.
And I think I think it's hard to start making decisions until everyone understands. You know, somebody might have a great comment at one of these town halls, somebody might have something thought of that none of us thought of, and, you know, you can't put, you just, but I think letting everyone know, is important so that they understand, and then you decide, with this information and the feedback we have, where do you go from there?
Well, I was
Just-
for the town halls when we did them last time. I thought they were beneficial. Maybe we'll get better turnout this time, maybe we'll get the same. But I think it's prudent for us to make the effort and to get the information out there and, you know, get the input that we can, whatever amount the input is, and give it. I think, Craig, we had a conversation, and this street fee, and I'm so sorry that I'm gonna do this and compare it to another city, but also not have all the information when I make the comparison, but, neighboring city on the other side of town has two different mechanisms, one for capital improvements for building projects and another for utility streets. And it has kept them for a long time having to issue debt for projects. Now, cost of construction, I think those days are over, but it still offsets them having to pay interest on whatever money they do set aside that way. And I think that's a smart way to do business. Is that similar to the fees that you're suggesting now, or are you familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, it's, different cities do different things, but typically it's like a user type fee. I know Waco kind of ventured into it, and I think they had a really,
No, that was terrible.
they rolled it out very poorly. They didn't really get the information out, and then when people got hit with
Mhm.
it, especially businesses, it hit some businesses pretty hard, but.
Well, the problem there was transparency. There was zero.
Lack
It
of-
just hit the box and everybody hit the ceiling, and then they found out that their city council members didn't even know that it was going out, and then they got all their calls like we would get, all right? So it was poor planning.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's, so unfortunately, we can't do here, my last city, so there is a mechanism, there's a street maintenance sales tax you can adopt. It's a, I think you can do, I think it's limited to 1/4 cent, but it may be a 1/2 cent. That, is strictly allocated for street maintenance. That's all you can do is maintain it. You can't build new streets with it, you only maintain it. And my last city, I left there at 16, that was bringing in almost $500,000 a year. We can't do that because we're at the state maximum because we have a 1/2 cent sales tax to lower property taxes, and the county has a 1/2 cent sales tax to lower property taxes. So there is no extra sales tax to adopt. We'd have to repeal part of the tax rate to lower property taxes. You know, and the negative side of that particular tax rate is for every dollar of new sales tax we bring in, 33 cents of it goes lower property taxes, so it's not revenue that comes in that can be used to do some of the street. So without having that tool available, then, you know, would residents and business owners be willing to support a fee if they knew that fee was going to only be used for maintaining? Because, you know, as we redo these streets and as these new subdivisions are built, there are things we can do to really extend the life of them, whether it's asphalt overlays or the micro seals we've been doing. Micro seals, they'll add another 7+ years, and overlay could add 10 to 12 years to an existing street if you get to it before you start having subgrade issues. But those are much less expensive than building new roads, but they are still. I think we've got 3 streets left to do all of the Chapman, both sides of the road, and when we finish there, we'll spend about $200,000 to do the micro seal on all those streets. And those streets are at the point where they need it. If we go another 2 or 3 years, they'll start failing. So we've got 3 more to knock out, hopefully this year, and we'll have that done. But then there's next streets coming up, and as we start, some of these streets we've already done. Let's see, we did Lou in 2008. It's going to be due for a micro seal in another 3 or 4 years. So having that revenue coming in so that as we fix all these streets, we can maintain them to where in another 20 years, we don't have to say, now you got to get $100 million to reconstruct. You don't want to have to keep reconstructing the roads. They should be constructed once right. And then if you maintain them, worst case scenario is you reclaim them. Just grind off the old asphalt, recompact them, put new asphalt on them. But If they're neglected like they've been here to the base fails, the subgrade and the base fails, then you have no option but to reconstruct them.
So my thought was, and I'm good with your recommendation, if you say street maintenance fee is the most prudent way to go forward,
No, I don't know this is the most prudent fee, it's just, it's
it's
a
an
way.
option. Well, my thought is on that half cent, that we put towards property tax, nobody in this city thinks that their property tax, they don't feel that, they don't feel that.
No.
But would they feel, and how much money would the quarter cent, is it quarter cent, you said, how much?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Quarter cent for street maintenance, how much would that generate? $500,000? I don't know if it's that good here. Azel's
Pretty
bigger.
close. Yeah, cause the
Okay.
sales tax here,
So-
total sales tax we bring in here is more than what we were bringing in when I left there.
so does that mean you could almost make up the 700,000 difference?
Getting
in
close to
maintenance?
it.
I
You
mean,
might.
you're-
And nobody
Close.
feels the half cent on their tax bill for the city.
Well, no, it's not
Nobody
gonna
feels-
raise their tax rate a half cent. It will raise the sales tax a half cent.
Okay,
So
sales
right
tax.
now-
Okay, I'm sorry.
Right now, the full amount we do every year, when we do the calculation, it lowers our overall tax rate. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 cents.
Okay, so there's another mechanism.
Yeah,
So
yeah, so there's sales.
without it, we're looking at a 5 to 6 cent rate increase on tax rate to offset what we would miss
If
from
you
the sales
eliminated
tax.
the entire,
Okay, yeah, that's not a trade I'd like to do.
and that would require a vote.
Yeah,
They would have to go
I
to
wouldn't
the
wanna do
voters.
that.
So-
I didn't know it worked like that, but,
I don't think there's ever been somebody roll one of those back.
yeah, well, half cent in my mind doesn't sound significant,
Yeah,
but how it
yeah,
actually, how much money that generates for what we're paying, yeah.
right.
Scratch all of what I said, thank you.
Speaking for me, since I don't, I'll say we don't, but you know more than I do, you've been here a little longer. But since I don't know all the options, I would like to have you, who does know the options, to present that to us, and that would help us make a better decision with that information than just with, all right, we could do this or that. Maybe we could have all the options you recommend and then go from there.
There's not
I mean,
many,
that
but we
sounds-
can definitely do
Are
that.
you good with that? Maybe
Whichever
the
ones are
options include, the options include some what-if numbers, so that everybody could understand how much money we could raise with this, or we could get with this.
Right.
Then again, with the roads, what we can do with the 5 plus anything else that might be added. So again, I'm commingling these two things together right this minute. But on the roads itself, the possibility of helping us get our maintenance budget up to where it needs to be, and how that affects anybody with numbers, with examples of numbers, which,
And all that information be used to help educate the community
That's
as
right.
well, so.
and then I think the town halls would be a good idea, but I think the beginning town halls would be for informational purposes. All the stuff we get, then you go give it to everybody else.
With
Make
the
sure-
opportunity to get
Right,
feedback from it.
before we start down the road of how do you solve this problem. Everybody good with that?
Agreed.
Okay,
Everybody agree to attend the town halls, participate.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the biggest part.
yeah, you gotta
Being
come,
there.
yeah.
Because
gotta
we
come.
did not have,
We will, before we do that, we'll make sure everybody that we find that we can all kind of, at least the majority of us, if not all of us, can get in those bright dates, or something like that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk timing and what's the best time of year to do it.
Summer's obviously.
We don't
not
wanna,
the best time.
we don't wanna go up against school events and stuff like that, so.
Vacation.
So there's a lot of planning to do it. It's not something that will happen in the very short term, but, you know, with limited staff, we wanna be careful what we're spending our time on, because we don't wanna spend a bunch of time on something and then you all not be comfortable with that, so.
All right, so that'll give you a little while to do that, because I know
Yep.
it won't be for the next meeting, but,
No, cause
Then we
we're
can-
about to kick off budget, so that's
Yeah.
gonna bog things down.
so that gives him somewhere to go. Okay, we're addressing some of it, and give somewhere to go. Okay, thank you. Lastly, let's go back to, the, Hunting Estates streets. So, Craig gave us an update just for the short term. You wanna, since we're in the meeting, you'll give that one more time?
Yeah, so last meeting, the discussion was, I think we landed on, if we're gonna move forward with this, we need to probably make sure, see how the roads were constructed, if they were constructed within our specifications or close to our specifications. And so I did reach out to Langerman and asked them, told them what our street construction standard is, and asked them what kind of tests would they have to do to determine that. And they said that they could do a core, there's two different ones, they can do a 5-foot core, those are really expensive, and we're not gonna reconstruct the road, so we don't need to know the clay content under the road. I mean, we all know there's a lot of clay here. But what they will do is they'll go through the asphalt, they'll go through the pug base, make sure it was properly compacted, and then they'll go into the subgrade and make sure that it was properly limed per our specifications. And so this was done in 6 phases. So in talking with them, talking with our engineer stuff, I think we said we want at least 2 cores in each phase just to make sure it's continuous, because we have gone into streets here prior to some of our projects, and we'll do 1 block and it'll be 8 inches of road base and 1.5 inches of asphalt, and we'll go to the next one, and it'll be 3 inches of road base and 1 inch of asphalt. And so we want to make sure that, you know, you might get lucky and hit one spot, but so we want to make sure there's at least a level of consistency in each phase. So we did get a quote on that, and the cost of doing the cores, patching where they take the cores out, because they actually take it's about a 3 or 4 inch diameter core out of the road. They'll patch those with hot mix asphalt, re-level them off, and they'll run the analysis and all that other things. And for the 12 tests, it's estimated about $4,500 total cost. So I know the discussion last time was anything like that was going to be done, it should be picked up by the HOA, but I think what you all kind of have to kind of figure out is if they do come back consistent, or you want to do it, because I don't know that we want to ask the HOA to go out and spend $4,500 and it not be the council's intent to take the roads off.
Yeah, it's kind of us wanting to get the test done to see if we want to do something or not. So I think that would be incumbent on us to pay for it if we're the ones requiring it. Personally, I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. I don't live there, but.
Well, the other part there too is that we've had some discussion on what is the mountain that is in front of us in the tune of $40 million and how much has to be done, and you're gonna add something on the back. Are we going to go there even to spend the money? We don't want them to spend their money if council's not gonna, if they're not gonna decide yes, or at this point in time, is it so pertinent that you take it at this point in time, knowing it's gonna be this far down the road if they ever had a problem? So that's.
I think you spoke it clearly, but I want to ask a question to the gentleman out here. And so you hear what we're looking at. So my thoughts last meeting were, if we did this, the property owners should pay for it. And the reason that is because any developer would have had these core samples done during their expense and shared that report with the city. That's just how any development would happen. That didn't occur because it was a private development. With my thought, it'd be prudent that the homeowners pay for that. So I guess now that we have a number, $4,500, is that palatable? The other side of that coin is if it is palatable, it still isn't a guarantee that the council will accept them. It might not even be a guarantee if the council will accept them if they pass, just because of the mountain of work that needs to be done. So if the court, y'all paid for them and the courts came back perfect, it's the best street in town, and then we said, wait a second, I don't want to spin your wheels or your money. So what are your thoughts on the conversation?
If I could.
No, yeah, go ahead.
I'm Tom Haynes, and represent the HOA board. Actually, depending on what you all decided tonight, what I was gonna say is, if we could kind of put a pause on this, because we as the board really feel like we need to go back to the community now. Because as you might all remember, our original proposal coming to you all was, would you all be able to act as an insurer in case a catastrophic event occurred? And last meeting, I think it was determined that would be illegal. So at this point, we need to go back to the community, back to the neighbors, and say, do you want to continue having private streets? And there's a lot of reasons why a lot of our neighbors want to continue having private streets. So before you all spend any money, and before we say, yeah, we'll spend the money, we need to talk to our neighbors and get a feel for how they feel. Personally, I think the outcome of that vote would, based on just informal comments we've gotten, would be, we want to keep our private streets. And if that thanks for your time, but the way we're doing things right now is adequate. And then it's up to us to figure out, you know, do we need to start building a contingency fund, for catastrophic. I'm having
That's
trouble
all
with
right. So, okay.
bad events in our neighborhood. So, does that make sense?
Sure,
Absolutely.
that's absolutely, very fair.
So what percentage would you say would be reasonable
What percentage of what's?
of yay or nay? Let's say you have 80% of the people that say yes, or 20% of the people. What percentage would you say you would want to bring it to us for if that many, that percentage of people agree?
Yeah.
That's kind of my
I
question.
don't know if it's a simple majority, I guess we'll have to decide that. I've not had a.
Yeah. I would want to know that,
Yeah.
just as a council person.
Sure.
I would want to know if like 20% of the people are wanting it done and 80 don't.
Yeah.
I mean, because I would not be inclined to want to do it as a city if that were the case. You know, if the by far the large majority of the people didn't want us to do it, then why are we even talking?
Exactly.
You know,
We
so,
can give you that feedback.
yeah, good.
All right, so I'm gonna say on that one that based on y'all's recommendation, you'd like to go back, that we'll again at this time table our discussion until you bring it back to us at a further time with any different information, if that's okay with y'all.
Sounds great.
Okay, everybody on the council good with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. That's our last agenda item. Anybody have anything they would like to talk for future items before we adjourn?
I have none.
Anybody on this end? Nope.
Nada.
Mr. City Manager? All right, with that, at 7:02, we will adjourn.